little time from you. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. I am Dr. Vamshi Krishna Gharapati, who is part of Avadhuta Dattapitham, and I'm the person with SGS VedaNidhi Academy and Masters Institute, which is a part of Dattapitham. And we are in the process of digitizing some of the texts which are already available, but to adding new attributes as well as more information to this, and as well as creating a Vaidika Padakosha, which consists of the every available pada from all the Vedas. Here again, as you all know that Mantra Brahmanaja or Vedanabhadhayam, I would not like to limit the sense of Veda to Samhita alone. Because as I have studied many Granthas texts, it is almost the Brahmanas have even richer wealth than the Samhitas at many places in many Vedas. So what is the current condition? Many seers, many great sages and saints, including our mentor, Shri Gadapati Sachidananda Swamiji, he has been inspiring many people to do this and network like-minded people in government as well as non-government sectors. Now let us analyze what is the best methodology of preservation and propagation. We all offer our obeisance to great masters who have influenced us and inspired us. And beyond this, what is the line of action that we all need to adopt? And here we have the two-pronged strategy to preserve the methodology. That would be the Shabdatmaka Parirakshana and Arthatmaka Parirakshana. Shabdatmaka Parirakshana means to protect the core texts in their full, along with all the full attributes. Arthatmaka Parirakshana is the, as he said, hermeneutics or the methodology of interpretation. That is the second part. Now, what is happening, because we are associated with, because my childhood as well as my youth is almost gone into the Vedic system itself. I made, probably than many of you, I stay in the company of many Veda students as well as the scholars. Shabdatmaka Parirakshana consists of the Varna Ucharana Vidhi to start with. I will just give two examples. I hope I am not insulting anyone. There was an interesting conversation between two scholars. Actually, each were inimical to the other. They were saying Shankaraha Sankaraha. Shankaraha Sankaraha. He wanted to make a mimic of Shankaracharya. Sankara means it's an adulteration. Shankara means one who is doing something beneficial. Okay, then the other fellow just retorted. Madhvaha, then he said, why are you saying this? He said, Sha Sayor Abhedaha. There is no difference between Sha and Sa. Then the person has just retorted. Madhvaha Shakrut Bhunkte, Madhvaha Sakrut Bhunkte. Shakrut is Kaudang. Sakrut is once. In a way, okay, when you say Sakara and Shakara don't have any difference, Madhvaha Sakrut Bhunkte means he eats once. If you take the Shakrut, it means he eats cow dung. So, one Ucharana Sthana is making all the difference. How many of the Vedic proponents and the teachers or those who are managing the schools, how many of them know the difference between many of these things? Because the Talusthana Ucharana and Dantasthana Ucharana and Murthasthana Ucharana, these are really posing many challenges. And the Nakara and Nakara, these are another important this thing, because we come across many types of Ucharanas, including the one which happened very recently. I don't want to comment on anyone, but this is the sad state of things that are actually deteriorating from day one to day one. From our time, from our study time to our next generation also teaching now. This is what happening. Let me give you another example. In our childhood, our Swamiji used to make all the children, including the devotees, in a group. The first one would say something in the ears of the first one. and they will ask them to just pass on this message to everyone. And when they said Sarva Veda, the message gets rounds and round, and the last person gets the message as Idli Sambar. Where is Sarva Veda? Where is Idli Sambar? So there is terrible disconnect. We all rely upon the gamut called the Guru Mukha Uchcharana Purvaka Anucharana as the Upadesha Paddhati. The Guru says something, the student grasps something, he reproduces the same thing. This is the Uchcharana. But if there are no controlling points, checks and balances, where are we heading? That is the question on the board right now. Because there is no one to check. Of course, we have the examination systems, examination boards everywhere, which periodically try to correct, but the individualistic, egoistic, centric, there are many things that cannot be repaired. But what are the solutions? Am I being a cynic? No. See, we need not devise anything new. Our rishis had the great knowledge how best we can repair the system and keep it intact. Because if say 5,000 or 10,000 or even before that, someone has chanted this mantra as Yajnasya Ghoshada Sipratyushtagum Vrakshaha with the same intonation, same swaras, with the same Adamatra Kala, same Virama Kala, and even if I am chanting the same thing, these are the Shiksha Granthas which have really protected us from deterioration or distortion. So what is the current state to promote the learning? Here in India, you just get a degree from any institution of its name or anything even without that, or you can even fabricate some of the certificates. That is also happening, unfortunately. You get to go and teach in any school. There is not a single system of authentication or certification. Even if you have a BA degree, Bachelor of Arts degree, you always need one education degree which says B.Ed. That is required for you to teach, start your teaching career. This Shiksha Shastra was supposedly meant by that. Even when the system was devised, even in many Indian universities, the word equivalent word to BA is Shiksha Shastri. Shastri is the degree and Shiksha is the education. So that Shiksha education is missing to the large context, and it is, you need not be a great master of grammar or any nirukta for you to understand. So this is one aspect which requires all our attention. That is the number one point. Then we had our share of woes when we started our careers in the publication field. There were many lacuna which could not be very easily this thing because the sharing was almost absent. How do you exactly visually represent the characters that you have? Because I had gone through many of these texts and I had my share of experiences. As Girishji was explaining, we also had many of these things. Being in the field and chanting is almost 8 hours of my daily routine. 1/3 of my time goes in it. So necessarily I have to face all these things. The Uchcharana Paddhati of the pronunciation methodology is a different from what you exactly see. I will give 2 examples. Kritsna is one word. Kritsna means complete. How do you write it? Ta, sa, na. These are the 3 things. Because I am only dealing about, because he has already explained the Sanskrit part of it. The Vedika Samskrita, I am only talking about that part. Takara, Sakara, Nakara. When you take a Pratishakhya, one of the Shiksha Granthas for Yajurveda, or for the matter Rigveda, in grammar we have got an optional thing. Chayo Dvitiyaha Moshkara Sadehe. It can be, the Takara can become Thakara, whereas in Yajurveda it's compulsory. So it has to start with Kritsana, becomes Kritsana. And then we have got something called the Abhinidhana. Abhinidhana is the first of the each Varga letter. Then we have Thakara, Sakara, Takara, Nakara. When I add the another Tadhita Pratyaja, it becomes Kartsniya. It becomes Thakara, Sakara, Takara, Nakara, Yakara. These are the 5-fold these things. How best we can represent them visually? That becomes a challenge. For that Sanskrit 2003 were some of the fonts. Actually, they have done a good job. And I was discussing with Girish ji about the Microsoft being the very leading software provider. The word editor is the most famous in India. So how best we can have conjunct glyphs to represent what we pronounce. And Vedic characters, including Samaveda, there were some of the challenges. They had approximately 25 to 35 special glyphs that are being used by the Veda practitioners on this day. So, Sthitasya Gatis Chintaniya is the adage. If someone is already there, you have to take care of them. You can't ask them to change themselves. So instead of using something else, because the Korean and Chinese and Japanese characters have a huge proportion in the Unicode, this thing, more than thousands of this thing. Whereas the Devanagari and Indian languages consume less than 70 or 80 characters, not more than 100. So if there is a possibility, we can try to include those visual representations. As you all know that Samaveda has many different representations. I will be showing some of the glimpses after this. So then our team had started, and we had started with the font modification. Whatever is really required using the font creator, we had included those glyphs. Then comes how best you can type them, because typing was a nightmare at many points. And some of the intrinsic combinations that are hardly appreciated by many. I will just give you Te Amshubate. Te Amshubate is the separation. Te Amshubate means then you should have the Akara Prashlesha first. Then you should have the Anuswara. If it is otherwise, it is not represented properly. Similarly, when we have the Kampa aspects, then also we find similar difficulties. So in that context, we had to separate the Swaras as well as the Akara Prashlesha and the Anuswara. Visarga, we never find such instance. So if we need to take these considerations to this thing, then we had started with the font modification. Then we had to create for easy typing, the keyboard had to be modified to suit our needs. And many active volunteers, they had already started. So we are taking care of some of these things. We will take the help of seniors like Peter Scharf and Girish ji in processing this. Then comes the mechanical combinations. As I was rightly explaining, separating two words is a little difficult job. Joining two words is very easy. But when we have the system of Vikruti Patha, how best we can represent them? If you give 3 or 4 words, we need to find a mechanism to how best we can represent them. That would be, it's a sort of teaching, machine teaching. How best we can do this? There is scope for that. But the Vikruti Pathas are not represented in any of the books because they are voluminous. They are voluminous. If you choose to publish the Dhanapatha, probably you would run around the British Encyclopedia type of thing, 27 with 62 volumes of this size. And without those books, people have been actually mastering this art or this science, whatever you call it. This is how it has been. So how best we can help those students, because there are certain deficiencies where people are very likely to make mistakes. How best we can correct them? This is one of the things. Then after the font modifications, the keyboard creation was done, and the layout was also not very aesthetic. So we had to look for something which is actually very visually appealing, aesthetic. Then these keyboards were created. Samaveda, we had created separate keyboard, Rigveda edges, and certainly in the InScript keyboard, which is the standard of this thing, there are many unused in the main keyboard itself. We don't know why they have designed like this, the way they have started. There are many unexplained things. So to the best of our ability, we could, because we are also used to the InScript keyboard, we had made little modifications so that we have the Dirgha, Rikara, the Likara, which are never present on the InScript keyboard. That's how we had done next one. And after digitizing the main, we have nearly typed 100,000 VedaVakyas from Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Shakra Shakha, Ranagani Shakha, Taitriya Shakha, and Paiparada Shakha of Atharva Veda, and Shauraka Shakha of Atharva Veda, along with all the Brahmanas, Shatamata Brahmana, they are also available. But the proofreading was one important factor, which is actually is the wrong side of everything. Because except for very one or two sides, you can't find exact representation of what we chant. So then we had initiated the proofreading, which had rigorous rounds of 6 rounds by various teams of scholars who are actually going through this. Next. Transliteration technology has evolved, as Girishji has told, and my brother is also instrumental in developing it. And an exe format jar file was created so that anyone can do it very easily. That's similar to this. But the beauty of that was, after the proofreading is done, along with the swaras, they were Unicode private space characters which are equivalent to the representation in every language. So we had started with 3 or 4 languages. Devanagari, Telugu and Kannada and Roman, of course. These 4 are already customized. And if we have more demands from Tamil or Oriya and Assamese, because these are the people who cannot read Devanagari, for them we would like to include in the next project.
So we don't do iTrans, we don't do Roman, we do Latin, which is diacriticals.
Diacriticals. Next. Now our job on hand. What we intend to do is, we need to have the metadata about many mantras, and Girishji has provided many of the inputs that are already there. And we also have similar information that we will find some synergy about it. This envisages the building a robust search engine and repository to provide information on Vedic sentences, mantra, vakya and brahmana. Next one. Most of the mantras have these things in common. You can have the seer, meter, the chandas, the devata, and the missing link between the mantra and brahmana, the VedaVaakyaProject. How to use the mantra, where to use the mantra. And even before that, as Shastriji was explaining about the Yopam Pushpam Veda, first you know the analogy and the directory path. It's an 8-stage directory path. It starts with the Veda, which Shakha, which Grantha, which Ashtaka or Kanda, and which Prapataka, which is the Anuvaka, which is the Varga, and next comes the final unit of the mantra or Vakya. So this directory path will actually lead us. So it's some sort of wizard type of mechanism what we have in Google Drive. If you just click anywhere, it will list out whatever is this thing. This is what we intend to this thing. Then the Padapatha is already available for many of the texts, and we have deployed a separate mechanism to have Padapatha for many things which are not Samhita. We have Padapatha for most of the things. But when you come to Brahmana, there are many difficult words which even the scholars do not dare to even touch that. In the Aitareya Brahmana or in the Chandogya Brahmana or anywhere, there are many words. Even the Aitareya Brahmana consists of 45% to 55% is just mantras itself. Yatudhana nirudati radu rakshaha. If I ask anyone, they will just conclude it the wrong way. Yatudhana nirudatihi adu rakshaha. Adu is exactly, it's an expression of saying eva. So these are the specifics in each Veda. We have got several such instances. So Padapatha for those texts which do not have the Padapatha, that is one thing which we need to work. And next comes the Arthatmaka Parirakshana. The interpretation, are we free to do anything? I will just quote one example before I conclude. Sometimes back there was a riot in Mangalore near our place. The subject was, there was a misrepresentation of a text. It all started in the linguistics. It was a translation of a 1967 publication by one Christian pastor, evangelist, because evangelists are found to be more dangerous than any other denomination in India, because they are out to denigrate people actually. If you profess your religion, there is no problem, but when you denigrate others, that comes the problem. There erupts the problem. So then if there was this thing, and then the law and order, machinery, everything was brought in, and the riots were controlled. But the fundamental question started, why did it start at first place? In the book there was one mantra, one different representation or the distorted representation about Agni. Chatvari Shunga, Trajo Askabada, Dveshirisha Saptahastaso Askya, Tritha Badho Vrishabhor Oraviti, Mahodeva, Martyan Avivesha. This is the daily prayer which is chanted by every Yajnika when they do the Yajnas. Every Purohit chants it, be it Rigveda, Yajurveda, or Atharvaveda, we have similar verses. He wanted to represent this as an incarnation aspect of Jesus. And he said, okay, what is wrong in my interpretation? There was a discussion and it was raging. He said, instead of using RSS was the leading with this thing. He said, instead of using group, please answer my question. What is wrong in my representation? Is it right or wrong? Then ultimately some scholars from other places have intervened and they have solved it amicably. They said, these are the factors that have limited your knowledge. That is why you are wrong. That happened. Then actually it occurred to us, how many people in India are in a position to exactly interpret the way it should be interpreted? Yesterday, Rajivji was very apt in saying that there can't be room for misrepresentation and misinterpretation. Even if your intentions are good, if you are not able, what would happen? And in India, we have got not more than 100 people who can really understand a VedaVakya. If this is the state, what best we can do? Hello. And only the distorted versions. B.V.K. Shastriji was always saying, if you go online, we have very limited room for exactly knowing what is happening and what is the exact representation, what is the authentic version. So we need to have such version for every mantra along with its simple meaning and its exact use, which is stipulated in the Kalpa Sutras, namely the Grihya Sutra and Shrauta Sutra in particular. How best you can make use of this mantra. And we have got Rigvidhana, which is a text, great text, which says that this mantra can be used for this particular context and you will benefit. Because these are all experiments by rishis like Shaunaka who have given us the ultimate wealth of knowledge about how best to make use of this mantra. And the etymological meaning, of course, it is also there, where it is exactly connected, the digital dictionaries that they both have cited, if that can be connected through this system, we will have a robust engine, at least, if not open to everyone, it can be open to everyone, no problem. At least it could be very useful to many people, and this is the digitization part, but the actual effort would lie elsewhere, when we can enthuse more people, institute more internships, and offer more incentives for graduates to study further. Because what we have in India is just basic literacy. It will not be out of context and overstatement when I say that it is very hard to find people who can match the, say, introduction of Peter Scharf to the Vedic, this thing. It's very hard to find many people. So that is the state of education these days. So we need to think beyond the basic Ganapati Puja model, which is of course essential. Ganapati Puja is everything in our life, but we should really think beyond this and incentivize those higher studies, because that would actually protect us, keep this intact. Because even after having everything in your system, we can't expect anyone to log on to your system and find out. But when there is a need, we should really work towards this direction. That is my humble submission. Thank you. Any questions, please? Please.
From the title of your paper, I thought you were talking about problems of Gurukulas or something.
Yes.
But but you have very specific Vedic education in mind. That's all right, no problem. You did not mention whether you are consulting Vishwabandhu's Vaidika Padanukrama Kosha or not. That's one thing. Then for some of these other things, Maurice Bloomfield's Vedic Concordance. Now, suppose you find that the Vaidika Padanukrama Kosha, which is a gigantic undertaking, then only dedication could make it possible. When there were no computers, it was all done by cards and slips. And most of the time it's very accurate. What you should do is actually put everything in the computer and then go on supplementing.
Yes.
Whenever new Vedic text is discovered, just supplement it. Same thing has been done for Maurice Bloomfield's Vedic Concordance. For about 100 years it was a very useful text. Then an Italian young man, he has taken all later discovered Vedic texts and put them in. So that was point number one. Second point is, there is an irony in a way in what you have said. Because Likhita Pathaka was one of the Adhama Pathakas in the case of Veda. And now, if the Vedic tradition itself is going to come to depend on what is written or printed so much, then we really have turn the tradition on its head.
Let me explain that way. Okay, please continue.
So that's one thing. And my third point is, at some place you will have to see how many people are going to use it. And that's why, for example, Vikruti Pata. In traditional collections, you'll hardly find any manuscript of Vikruti Pata. And whatever manuscripts exist are for illustration purposes only for a small part. Written in 18th, 19th century, as late as that. So, should you invest so much energy in creating something that is not really going to be useful for that many people? And wouldn't it be better to write a correct manuscript with the help of so many specialists, put all the special signs you want by, hand, and make it available in the form of photocopy. The computers are available does not mean we should get rid of the older technology. In some cases, they will be much more efficient. That's what I think.
Let me come to one point of Likhita Pataka.
Yes.
Likhita Pataka is after, see, the emphasis is that you should memorize the text. But to memorize it, nowadays, we are having the aid of a visual representation.
That's all right.
For only that part I am talking about. And when you said the Vikruti Pathas, because I have come across many traditions which they are saying that there is, to publish such a huge manual, it would be literally impractical for us to maintain it.
But is it necessary?
Yes, why it is necessary is that if you develop a system and it would be serve as a reference only. You can't just read the entire this thing to chant the Ghanapatha or anything. But if you have a reference of this, because there are, the Patha Bhedas are actually the down point. When people say that I infer it different way, I infer it different way. At least if there is some way that, okay, this is based on this Shiksha Grantha, or this is the system, this is Jata Darpana, based on which the system is derived. And if you have substantiation for these things, and if there are, we can record the points of Patha Bheda. If there are some, say, okay, this is my Patha, then you should provide some evidence for it. If you don't say I don't have evidence, because there are many evidences, but in the absence of that, now these days we are coming across many distortions. So for that we need to have a reference. That is the only mean of having something visual representation. That's the one thing. The second one, as you said, the Vaidika Vishwa, this thing. We have actually contacted them. If it is digitized format, it's easier for us to just provide a link there. Otherwise, we need to find somewhere to bring that.
I think just as pictures, it's already available, is it not? Peter? One
No,
doesn't have to carry physically 14 volumes of Vaidika Padanukrama course.
Just I will tell you.
I don't know if it's Vedic
No,
I think
when I say Nadibhya Paunjishtam, if you want to know the word of Paunjishta, what should be the manner? You want to refer 14 manners just to find out this thing. So, since the technology is already available, it is not very costly these days. Earlier, if 20 years ago, it would have been very costly. But these days, it's very easy with available tools. We can make it even fast. Even for my consultation purpose, I don't read the Vyakhyanas of Amarkosha anymore. I always go to some of these libraries and the digital libraries. That makes the life very easier for an academic researcher.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. We had 5,000 books of bhajans of Swamiji. We used to carry 5 bhajan books to each bhajan session.
No,
We built an app
I'm
in
guilty of that.
Bhajan Mala, and then it's available in 4 languages. You can refer to all 10,000 bhajans and sing whatever you want
That
every
convenience.
day.
Yes, the convenience only.
It's on your phone.
I'm not opposed to the initial.
Peter wanted to say
But
something.
I think the point that Ashok is bringing up is the issue that, of duplication of effort.
Yeah.
You know, there's a lot of work that has been done in print, and it took a long time. It took decades to make this Vishwabandhu's koshas, you know, and all the analysis of the Vedic text is there. So why not just digitize those rather than start from scratch again?
Yes, if there is open-mindedness among the peers, certainly we are open to
For
this.
example, the students of Professor Jha, if they take 1 volume and say, okay, over 4 years we will do it, that's much faster.
Yes, that's what. This is how by networking only we had reached this stage,
Yeah.
and there is scope
But
for
also
much
there's
more.
you mentioned you're entering Vedic text again. All of the Vedic text has been digitized. They're all digitized. The TDIS project has digitized just about everything.
Which one?
TDIS in Germany.
Okay.
TITUS.
Titus project.
TUS.
I know that.
How is it? Is it readily available for download?
Yeah, it is available for
It's
download.
available. I mean, you contribute a text and you become a member, you can download everything.
See, the problem we saw with lot of texts is exactly this one.
So you can improve them, but you don't have to start over from scratch.
That's right. See, if there is open-mindedness among the collaborators,
If it is
that
in
can happen.
Unicode,
Titus project is a group project. Anyone who contributes a text can become a member, and then you have access to the whole bunch. And you've digitized the text, so you contribute your text and you become a member. You don't have to type everything in over again.
And the new text you can put in. And
We had taken collaboration for many among these digitization of say 75 texts. We had taken the help of many other this thing in southern India and as well as some Gujarat. We had taken help of them. I didn't know about this German
Yeah, so
gentleman.
there
We'll find
are
out.
lots of these projects, and so the first thing, main
It's a
thing,
short
Is this
you
it?
should
Reader?
become members of an active.
There's one.
Yes, that's it. This is it.
Okay.
No, but can you are you able to download this?
As I said, he said
You have to become a member
Okay, and how do you become a member?
by contributing a text.
Okay,
All you have to do is contribute one text.
okay.
So,
You
and
get
the-
access to 150.
And our other problem is that if you deal with government projects, to get something out of
No,
it,
no,
it would
this
be
is
out
a
of
private project.
That
This
would be
is one
fine.
of the best things that happened.
Even if the collaborators are our best friends, they will not be able to officially give anything. That is our
Most
problem.
people, you know.
Alright, but the other thing is, you come and participate in this International Sanskrit Computational Symposiums, because there we're sharing information about what we do, so that, for exactly this purpose, that we avoid duplication of effort. We can cooperate and benefit from each other's work and complement each
Certainly,
other's work.
that is
rather
the reason
than
why I am
duplicate.
presenting what.
Yeah.
Your thing and
That's
people
why you're
will
here. We're
inform
great.
you about such things.
So when is the next
Sanskrit
Sanskrit
symposium?
Next year in Holland, actually in Thailand actually.
Well,
In the
we'll
World
have,
Sanskrit Conference.
yeah, there's an IT, attachment that Amba Kulkarni.
Yeah, they can come there.
Coordinate.
That's 50 World Sanskrit Conference.
Yeah.
We have a special session.
Yes, well,
That
certainly
will be the next
we'll be
one.
glad to be part of it.
And Pathavedas, yes, they should be recorded. It would be nice to have Rigveda or Atharva Veda with both Shaunakya
Now, the other
and
question
Kapala.
I had was, are these patas, I mean, there are systems to these patas, so can they be generated automatically from the base text?
Yes, we can generate.
So if we have the pata of the text,
Yes.
why can't we generate all those various
Yes,
patas
that's what
automatically?
I was discussing with
You
you.
know, it's A, B, B, A.
Yes,
A,
you are right.
B,
You are
C,
something
D,
like this.
you know,
Along
and
with
then-
this swaras.
And then you just do it, you do the sandhi. And
Yes, along with this
it's done.
swaras.
You don't have to retype the whole thing.
No, that's what I'm saying.
It's not like this.
It's about creating a software for it. That's what I'm talking about.
No.
You need not generate at all.
Yeah.
You need not write it. You need to generate it by machine.
I mean, I can write a Ghana program tonight and actually make it happen. Seriously, it's
So why are
very
you
easy.
saying it's not?
So let me share something in this
Yes.
direction. During 1985, I got hold of a book called Kramadipika, which is of Krishnadevaraya's time, unpublished manuscript. What it dealt with is the rules and exceptions for not the pada, not the grama pata. In pada pata, you split the samhita to words, not much of a problem, swaras. But you get to grama pata, then there are all the rules of grammar have to come into picture. Now, this is the issue.
No, both ways.
Mainly in Kramapata, serious problems are there. Rest of the
Both ways.
Kramapatas are there. Okay. Now, I took this book to almost 90% of the Veda teaching institutions around India and the scholars and asked, first of all, have you been aware of such a book, a teaching tradition?
No.
The second thing is, do you know the exceptions? All of them invariably said, we know the Samhita, we know the Padapata, and we know how to do the Gana. If you ask us the intermediary Vikruti Pathas, we do not have sufficient resources, training, neither are we trained or we have a system to train this. Then I ask the next question. Suppose a book like this is given to you, rule book is given to you. would you be able to teach this particular thing? We don't have the repertory for that. Why? Because Vedanga Vyakaranas and Pratishakya teaching traditions
That's what I
are
mentioned
dead
at the beginning.
in India for the last 200 years. And I'm not quoting just by heck of my imagination. Vidwan Rangnath Sharma, who was the best known person for the Vedanga Vyakarana all over India, and this one, N.T. Srinivasa, who was his contemporary, Gargeshwari was another person, almost all of them are gone now. 20 years ago they said, if anybody in India says they have done a Vyakarana Mahabhashya, you can make sure, I will give it to you in writing, they have studied only 20% of the Panini's grammar, 80% they have not studied. Why? There are no teachers who are teaching the Paninian grammar in 100%, not even in Pune.
That's a local perception. There are exceptions.
Let me complete this one. So I took this to Professor S.D.
Vaidika
Joshi.
Vyakarana is almost missing in the
Vaidika
scene.
Vyakarana
That
is
means,
gone.
Yes.
the
Let me
Vaidika
complete
Vyakarana
the-
is missing. Even the Siddhartha Kaumudi is missing.
Let me complete this one last part of that. I took this problem to Professor S.D. Joshi in Hyderabad in computational linguistics session. I asked him, okay, do you have this particular thing? His reply, I mean, of course, now that he's no more there, I'm just recollecting. He said, I am considered as out of the Munitraya tradition because I'm a rebel. Whatever I say will not be accepted. But if you ask me, if there is a system to do this particular thing, we have got to go back to Pratishakyas, which we are not having the repertory. Then I checked up with Professor George Cardona when I met him in Kerala and asked him, whatever is there in the books, Munitraya tradition we should follow. And my humble submission, I am open for revision, computational linguistic ground rules do not respect the Pratishakya system. That is why
we can devise the new rules. We can make new rules.
that's how, see, if you are looking at cough and cold analysis, it's simple to do it. If you are looking at a brain cancer issue, it requires an expertise.
Yes, but again.
We can debate that.
Anyway,
We can debate that.
It's not debating, it's clarification.
I will provide you whatever it is. I am open to correction.
I mean, it's very important for all your work, so.
We have wrapped it up. You want to say something? Give me. Sir?
Okay, I can come back at 3 o'clock.
No, we have wrapped it up. So, okay. Please come. Okay, we have the third presenter for the day,
Yeah.
Mr. Richard Bial, who is the head of Maharshi School and a leader in conscious-based education.
We didn't know there was one more
No, and I
presentation.
think what you've been discussing is so important for your